Hopefully they're okay. Fabulous. So brilliant. We'll get started. Sebastian, there's a few people I can see from the comments, as Paul has said, that's their first time. So thank you for taking the plunge on the Digital Drams. These have been really popular. They were obviously started during COVID, but and they're busier now. Even this one, I was just saying to Sebastian there that this one's sold really, really quick. So even more popular. The further we go from that COVID time, the actual more popular these become. So that's great. And yeah, we want them to be super interactive. At the end of the night, we're going to give you 15% off all the drams tasted. So you can enjoy if you enjoyed the sample, you can enjoy them in full at a discounted rate. And we want you to get in your tasting notes and your questions in the chat throughout. And once we get started, my main role is to do that, is to be your voice to talking to Sebastian. So, but anyway, that's enough from me. We did do one of these tastings with the slightly different lineup back in 2024, but we thought it was well enough time, or more than enough time to revisit. So for those who weren't on that 2024 chat, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself first, and then the distillery and the running order, Sebastian, please?
Sure. Thanks, Luke. Yeah, it's great to be back and to do another one of these with you guys. Always good fun. And I think we're going to have a nice kind of chilled out tasting. Got 6 really, really nice whiskies here. So what can I tell you about myself? I've worked at the Glasgow Distillery for 9 years, coming up this year. So we're a small team. So I look after a number of different parts of the business. So head of the sales and marketing team in the distillery, part of the whiskey blending team as well. So putting together all the different releases and everything that we're going to try tonight. I've had a hand in putting together, so no pressure. And also part of the kind of senior management team, so just kind of looking after the future of the distillery, where it's going. So I spent a lot of my week sampling casks, doing different kind of sensory stuff, as well as figuring out how best to get our whiskies in front of people and onto people's home bars and into bars around the UK and across 27 countries that we operate in as well. So yeah, good. It's a great job, part of the process from start to finish, really, which is awesome. In terms of the order for tonight, we're going to start with our core 3 single malts. So the triple distilled, the original, then the peated, all core range of 46%. We're then going to move on to one of our small batch products, which is the Constantia wine cask, 56.6. The next one after that's going to be the 8-year-old bourbon cask matured. Then we're going to finish on the Whisky Shop Exclusive peated virgin oak matured, which is particularly tasty. So hopefully that all makes sense.
Brilliant. Yeah. So if you want to get them poured, folks at home, and we'll start on the triple. Marvelous. So it's the core ones that we did have in the last tasting, I believe, the triple, the original, and the peated.
Yeah, so we would have done those 3, and then we would have had 3 other kind of limited editions or small batch products. And I can talk you through how we kind of structure our hierarchy of products as we go. But I'll give you a quick introduction to the distillery first, so just a couple of minutes, and then get cracked into the first dram. So the Glasgow Distillery, we're part of the new wave of single malt whiskey distilleries in Scotland. Started producing our single malt in 2015. So it's actually next week, a week today, will be our 11th birthday. So 11 years since cask number 1 was filled. Last year, we had some single cask celebratory 10-year-old releases. But we're a small, independently owned distillery started by 2 friends who founded the business in 2012. And we produce the single malts, Glasgow 1770 range, as well as some blended malts, a gin, a rum, and a vodka as well. We're a small team. There's 16 of us in the whole distillery. So that is 6 distillers, 1 cooper who works on site as well, managing casks. And then the rest of us work sales, marketing, logistics, finance, all the kind of things you need to run a small business. We're located in a very glamorous industrial estate on the outskirts of Glasgow, close to Glasgow Airport, and actually just around the corner from the Whisky Shop warehouse in the industrial estate called Hillington. So it's not your classic whiskey making location. If you're thinking of a distillery with kind of hills and heather and babbling streams next to it, that's very much not us. We're very much, we call ourselves contemporary urban distillers, showing that you can make great whiskey wherever your location. And I think that kind of industrial surroundings is kind of like part of us. It's part of the distillery. It's kind of quite Glaswegian as well, I suppose. We're very down-to-earth distillery, believing in accessibility, transparency, all of that good stuff when it comes to the single malts. So yeah, that's a little intro to the distillery. Shall we get cracked into dram number one?
Yeah, sounds like a plan. I was just bringing up dram number one on my screen, and as I was going to bring this up separately, but I've just noticed that the popped in my face now. This won a gold medal in our W Club Members' Choice Awards last year, which means it's currently got a 10% discount just for premium members, which everyone on this call is. So you get that on top of your discount. So that's an extra fun bonus. So it's normally 52 with the 10% off for premium members. It's 46.80, and then with the 15% we'll give up at the end of the call brings it down to 39.80. So nice big savings on this dram. And I think the peated one as well was one in that category too. So
yeah, it's the peated won the best.
Yeah, peated won that
best
category.
Lowland. Yeah.
And then this one got
anyway.
a gold medal in the same category. Yeah,
Fantastic. Right, so dram number one, triple distilled. It's one of our core range releases. This lovely blue bottle here, 46% ABV. It's matured in 3 different styles of casks. So first fill bourbon casks, refill bourbon casks, and a small amount of virgin oak casks as well. So it's 3 different styles of casks with full term maturation that are married together before bottling. About 96% of the cask makeup is either first fill or refill bourbon, and about 4% of the makeup is the virgin oak. So it's just a little touch of virgin oak. For me, this is a perfect kind of intro whiskey, great one to start. It's the one I always use to start our tastings because it's clean, it's delicate, it's bright, it's very kind of vanilla forward because of all the bourbon influence. I find it's packed full of orchard fruits as well. Lots of apples, pears. I get a little bit of that kind of coconut character coming through as well. A little bit of pepper on the finish as well. Really nicely balanced, layered, well structured. A really great whiskey to start with. And the triple distilled, it's 1/3 of our core 3 single malts, which are the first 3 of tonight. The triple distilled, the original, the peated. And these 3 single malts showcase one of the things that makes our distillery a little bit different compared to most whiskey distilleries in Scotland, in that we split our production year into 3 different styles of whiskey making. So we have 3 different new make spirit recipes that we run each year. So for 1/3 of the year, we produce triple distilled unpeated single malts, which off the stills give us this like super bright, effervescent, delicate style of spirit. For 1/3 of the year, we produce double distilled unpeated single malts, which are kind of richer, more robust, very fruit led. And for the final third of the year, we run peated double distilled single malts. So big, waxy, smoky, oily, as we'll come on to. And what that means is, as one small little distillery, we're able to produce a very wide range of flavors within our whiskies because we've got 3 totally different starting points. It's like 3 core strands of DNA that run through our whiskey making. And we kind of like to think of it almost like it's like having 3 distilleries using the same equipment, producing totally different styles of single malt. And of course, every distillery in Scotland has the power of using different casks or different age statements to bring like different flavors and character into their whiskey and to structure their whiskey range. But not every distillery has the pleasure of actually starting with 3 totally different starting points. So it's a really cool, not totally unique in Scotland. I think there's 4 or 5 distilleries that do that. But it gives us this really cool ability to make a wide range of flavour. And the triple distilled is very much at one extreme end of the flavour profiles that we make at Glasgow. So it's very much at that lighter, softer, more elegant, delicate end. And for me, we triple distilled, it's a bit of it kind of flies under the radar a little bit because I find sometimes when people see triple distilled on the bottle, they kind of think this whiskey's going to be boring. It's going to be a bit bland. It's going to be a bit kind of, people often say, well, that's your Irish style of whiskey, isn't it? And I say, no, try it. It's packed full of flavour. It's got all these orchard fruits. It's a really well-structured, well-put-together whiskey, and one of my favourite whiskies that we make at the distillery.
Yeah, it's very well balanced, very fruit forward, and then as you say, that kind of tropical fruit, a bit of mango and green apple as well. And then that vanilla and that peppery spice in the finish is lovely. It is a bit like, I'm not just saying it's because it's triple distilled. I think we were discussing this in the past, that it does remind me in terms of its actual texture of some of the double distilled Irish. There's something very light and approachable about it. In terms of that decision to go triple distilled, was like the 1770 sort of heritage, and that was that kind of a throwback? Because I believe where it does occur in Scotland, obviously as you mentioned, it's more associated with Ireland. It tends to be the big urban distilleries like Auchentoshan and that also triple distill.
So from the beginning, the plan for the distillery was to showcase variety of flavour. And we were building this new distillery in the Lowland region, but we didn't want to make just classic Lowland styles of whiskey. We wanted to make big waxy peated ones. We wanted to make these lighter, softer, more Lowland style whiskies as well, and everything in between. So that's one reason, is really just exploring the potential for the distillery to see where we can push the boundaries. Another reason being that the original Glasgow Distillery Company, from whose name we take, they were founded in the year 1770. They were one of the first distilleries in Scotland to get a license, and the largest distillery in the world for a long time as well. They closed in 1902, and between 1902 and 2012, when we started the business, there was no new independent distilleries in in Glasgow, despite being at one time having over 30 whiskey distilleries in the city. But that original Glasgow distillery also used to make triple distilled, unpeated double distilled, and peated double distilled whiskies as well. So it is a little bit of a nod to the heritage of the original distillery that was a real pioneer at the time. But also, it was really just about let's push the boundaries, let's see what we can do in terms of creating a wide range of different flavour.
And we got some great tasting notes coming in there. We've got I went to move it and I accidentally minimize it. So Ian says light and fruity and easy to drink. Great start. Frank says getting a bit of banana toffee. Banana toffee is a great taste note. Really nice and approachable, almost lemony vanilla. A lot of banana toffee for me too, says Jeff. We've got pear drops, banana toffee, good call too. The pear drops does remind me a bit of a Bushmills from that point of view. They've got kind of those kind of pear drops, boiled sweet flavors too. I'm more banana foams. Didn't notice banana toffee until it was mentioned. Dangerously sippable, super fruity nose. Banana toffo sweets as well. Not sure I can place that flavor, but I don't know. Brilliant. No, there's some great taste notes. It is an easily approachable one. So in terms of going back to your history, or John says, so John, I'll repost the line up there. We're on the triple distilled, which is the one we've started with. So we're still on the first one. So you're obviously relatively young. That kind of, can you take us back to that? I know you were there at the very, very start. Can you take us back to that process and the decision in terms of location and kind of building the brand? Because these ones aren't the only kind of spirit you produce there either, is it?
No, so we make gin, vodka, rum, and whiskey basically on site. And the original two founders, Liam and Mike, they saw this opportunity of bringing quality single malt production as well as a wide range of spirit portfolio into this new distillery in Glasgow. And because there'd been such a long time without Glasgow having its own single malt whiskey being produced, they thought it was a perfect location to start a new distillery. In terms of where we actually set up in the city, so just on the outskirts near Glasgow Airport in Hillington, it's a very pragmatic site, I would say. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing, but it absolutely serves all the purposes we could possibly want. We have the land on a long-term lease from a larger business called John G. Russell, who have the largest bonded site in Europe on the same ground that we're on. So the location of the distillery meant that we could get the distillery up and started quite quickly. We also use John G. Russell for a lot of our export works and a lot of our cask storage. So it's an accessible site with good links to the airport and to the M8, and basically getting our whiskey all around the world. And I'd say, yeah, if there's one way to sum up the distillery, I'd say it's pragmatic. Operational, not decorational, as someone said to me the other day. But we say, the proof's in the juice, and the main thing is really what ends up going into the bottle and into your glass. But yeah, the original founders, Liam and Mike, they kind of saw what was happening in the US, and they saw what was happening with the craft spirits movement in the United States. And when you visit some of the craft distilleries in the US, they tend to have the same kind of industrial setup at a similar scale to what we're at the moment. So that's kind of where the inspiration came from. And in terms of our production, our size, where we're at as a distillery, we're producing roughly 200,000 litres of pure alcohol a year. So our team is 16, producing 200,000 LPA. To put that in perspective, that's filling roughly 13 to 1400 casks a year. And that makes us one of the smaller producers in Scotland. But we like to think we're producing styles of whiskey and quality of whiskey that can stand on its own 3 feet.
No, class. We got a few more taste notes coming in there. I would like to pick up in a second on that idea of the American craft spirits, but we'll maybe kind of read out some of the comments and then we start to move on to the original first. The Yeah, we've got Kevin says for such a light, accessible tasting, it clings to the glass a lot, which is true. It's got quite a straw color. It's quite light compared to the other ones. But yeah, the oily, it is quite oily. It does cling to the glass. All right. Duncan says orange blossom, specifically on the nose. I don't know
Yeah,
if it's one of those power
definitely.
suggestions. I didn't get that until Duncan said it, and now I get it. But yeah.
Definitely floral. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Lewis says staff cat stood on the computer power button. So there you go. That's what happens when you're a cat person, not a dog person, Lewis. What can I say? And Frank D's pointed out something really good actually in terms of 46%. It does really work. I think that does for a dram like this. I mean, especially in this one, but not kind of lots of different drams of this kind of makeup. That extra ABV helps carry through a bit more of that flavor and that kind of oiliness that Kevin is referring to as well.
Definitely. Well, 46% is the minimum for us in terms of single malts. Everything we do, natural color and non-chill filtered. That was kind of an easy decision to make when we were looking at how we wanted to structure the releases. And that really goes back to that kind of integrity style of making whiskey with transparency at its core, showcasing the product without any coloring added. So it's all natural without stripping away any of those heavier, oilier compounds by chill filtering it. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why you're getting those kind of lovely legs in the glass and you get that oily, light texture coming through.
Marvelous. So as I said, it's 37.98. Sorry, 39.78 on the website because of the W Club Awards and then the 15% discount code which we'll give out at the end. So it's a great dram in that price point. We'll slowly start coming on to the original. So what's the big difference between the original and the triple distilled? So this I presume is double distilled. I think beyond.
Yeah, yeah, so I talk about these three different styles of new make that we produce every year: triple distilled, double distilled, and
Mhm.
double distilled peated. And it's not just the fact that one goes through a still an extra time or that one is using peated malt as part of the process. They're totally different recipes from start to finish. So with triple distilled, we're using a different yeast strain compared to the double distilled whiskies. So using a slightly more specialist yeast called MG Plus, which is the Pinnacle Distillers yeast, gives us some of those kind of brighter fresher fruit forward characters into the wash. And one of the main changes between the three styles that we're making is the cut points. So it's the collection points where we capture the hearts that will essentially be going into the casks. So with triple distilled, we've got a very high cut point. So we're collecting between 81 and 75% ABV. So this high collection strength gives us that super clean, effervescent, light, bright, delicate style of spirit. With our double distilled unpeated whiskies, we've got a much more medium bodied cut point. So we're capturing between 72 and 63% ABV. So that is more of an industry standard in Scotch whisky. And that alongside the double distillation as opposed to the triple. With the triple distillation, you're stripping out a lot of the heavier, oilier compounds in the spirit itself with that third distillation. With the double distilled whiskey, with the original as the perfect showcase, it has that everything we've stripped out of the triple to make it super bright and clean, we've maintained in the double distilled. So you get a much richer, more robust, bolder, dark fruit forward style of spirit coming straight off the still. And with that more medium cut point compared to the triple, it again lends to that richer, waxier, darker fruit forward style of spirit. And then when we talk about our peated whiskies, we've got an even lower cut point. So we go between 72 and 57% ABV as the cut point for our peated whiskey. So a very low cut point, almost a smattering of the low wines going in there to give it this real oily, waxy tactility kind of character into the base spirit. So yeah, hopefully that showcases that they're not just three different styles for the sake of it. They're totally different recipes. And the cut points for me are one of the most important parts. And I think they're really evident when you try these whiskies side by side, like we're doing now.
Yeah, it's actually amazing how much of a difference a cut point can make.
Like I was one distillery years ago I tried their spirit cut at three different points, and it was slightly aged in up at all in ex-bourbon casks, and you'd swear there were three different distilleries. Like even from the texture to the level of spice and the finish, everything was just different about them. So yeah, the touch point or the cut point can make a huge difference. And in terms of but the cask makeup specifically, in terms of this, the difference there.
Yeah, so the original. So
Hmm.
the original that we're trying, dram number two, again, 46% ABV, all natural color, natural filter, all the good stuff. This is double matured. So every cask is re-racked. So every cask, initially, the spirit's going into a first fill bourbon cask, maturing, and then we re-rack the spirit into virgin American white oak casks. So with triple distilled, there was three different styles of casks that are married together before bottling. With the original, everything's
Hmm.
double distilled, double matured.
Perfect.
So the virgin oak element here is much more pronounced. So you get all of the kind of toffee, vanilla, caramel, honey coming from the
Mm.
bourbon, but then you get a much more kind of richer, robust, dark fruit. A little bit of, I get some clove spice and some waxy orange peel. I get that kind of black pepper finish on the back of the palate too. And a lot of that's coming from the 6 months, 6 to 8 months in virgin American white oak. With the triple distilled one we tried before, only 4% of that bottling makeup is virgin oak. So it's just a touch of virgin oak influence that adds to the body and the roundness of the whiskey. Whereas for this, it's a much larger component of the actual spirit that's ending up in the bottle.
Hmm. No, no, definitely. I mean, you can really even just in the color alone, like
Yeah.
it's extraordinarily different. And yeah, it does come through as has been said in the chat there. Distinctly orangey throughout for me, says Duncan. I was just gonna say for the original, I get orange bitters. So yeah, it
Hmm.
definitely has that kind of burnt orange, like you've just zested a cocktail. Um, yeah, I imagine this
Absolutely.
one would actually out of the two of them would sit nicely in a cocktail actually.
It makes a great old fashioned because
Hmm.
it's quite bourbon forward in nature because of that the heavy virgin oak influence and because obviously it's been matured in bourbon before that you get all those waxy orange peel notes. So yeah, great old fashioned ingredient this. In terms of the casks we use, so double casked, it's the bourbon casks we source predominantly coming from Heaven Hill, a really good bourbon producer in the States. The virgin oak casks we use, so it's virgin American white oak. And all of our virgin oak casks come from a specific cooperage in Kentucky called Kelvin Cooperage. And Kelvin Cooperage actually started in Glasgow in the 1960s. So it was a Glaswegian family business. And they started on the banks of the River Kelvin that runs through the city past Kelvin Grove Museum and joins the Clyde. In the 90s, the family moved to Kentucky to be closer to the bourbon and wine industry in the States. And so when we were looking for fresh new casks to use, we thought, who better than this Glaswegian, still family owned business operating out of Kentucky, bringing them back, filling their casks with Glasgow's first new single malt in over 100 years.
Yeah, typical Americans stealing our jobs, huh? But no, that is a beautiful sort of tie together. The uh dram grammar or dram grammar, I said much bolder than dram one. It's a pity no visitor center. I live walking distance from the distillery, says Chris. Maybe DM Sebastian, Chris, maybe we'll work something out. The
well, Well, on that, if you don't mind me jumping in,
Yeah, work away.
Luke, so we don't have a visitor centre and we probably won't have for a very long time. We are very much an operational working site. Um, but we did last year start tours of the distillery. So we do small tours, 8 people at a time, and we do about two or three every month. So we have started welcoming people into the distillery if they're booked on a tour. I can definitely recommend the tour because it's great fun and I host some of them. We do 7 whiskies. You try whiskey from the cask in the warehouse. You spend time with our Cooper Shug, who shows you how to make a cask. You fill your own cask, and it's a real good look into an actual operating working distillery. As you're walking through the warehouse, you're walking through the stills, dodging the forklift with the high vis on. It's a really good fun experience. Um, I would say if you're interested in going on the tour, then get booked up ahead of time if you can, because I think they're sold out now until for at least the next 3-4 months. However, we did just launch some new warehouse tastings as well, which take place in the distillery warehouse. So they happen once a month. and we go through 6 casks in the warehouse, essentially. And our first one is in March.
Wow, that's exciting. Yeah, I think you'd mentioned the tours actually on the W Club Awards tasting, but I didn't realize about the warehouse ones, or maybe you had mentioned it and I'd forgotten. So that's very good. How easy then is it to get to transport wise if you're, let's say, staying in Glasgow for a holiday, whatever?
Yeah, so you can get the train from Glasgow Central and it goes directly to Hillington, which has 2 train stations, and then it's a 20-minute walk or so from there. There's also plenty of bus stops and bus routes that go through Hillington to get to Brewhead and the like as well. If failing that, it's a 10-15-minute taxi drive from the city centre.
Marvelous. So already better for having a few drams and getting home safely than 99% of Scottish distilleries. So, the Bob says tours are bootable. So he obviously didn't enjoy his trip. Paul says agree. I'm getting warm spice. The tour that I did the day before the Glasgow Whisky Festival was my highlight of last year for me. Defo worth it, says Ian. So that's high praise. Frank's
Nice.
got a fantastic taste note here. Terry's chocolate orange, which is bang on the money. Fair
Yeah.
play, Frank. I'm booked for June. Can't wait, says Dram Grammar. Sugar's a star. Something fresh and icy, like sorbet on the nose. Yeah, I can get where you're coming from there, Duncan. Hillington West Station is best. I actually go there at least once a week, but I always end up driving. Because yeah, I'm based in Govan, so it's a pain to go across that way. So it's easier just to jump on the motorway and spin down. But yeah, so it's good to know that it's easy accessible by train. So this dram bottle here is £47.50, but you'll get it for £40.37 after the discount at the end of the tasting. So very approachable price point. It is really, it's got a, I know there was comments towards the end on the sort of oiliness of the triple distilled, but there's something on the sort of, I don't know if it's the tannins or something. It kind of stays in the gums, and the finish really elongates. Sebastian, it is a very interesting dram. It's a very chewable and sippable dram, especially for an evening like this.
100%. And it's, it really stands up at 46%. We also do a cask strength version of this without any dilution, which is, even richer, even kind of bigger on that black pepper, the big waxy orange, the kind of flamed orange zest kind of notes. This was the first style of whiskey that we started making. So in 2015, we made double distilled unpeated whiskey all year. In 2016, we started making some peated single malt. And in 2017, we started making triple distilled, and thus the core 3 styles have sat since then. So the original has, a special place in our heart. It's kind of it's the most accessibly priced entry level into the range. But for me, it's just like a nicely well balanced whiskey. It's well put together. It's well priced. What more can you really want?
No, totally. So speaking of the peated, we'll maybe slowly come on to that one now. Because I'm conscious we're already about half an hour in. And we have 6 drams to go through, which is slightly, I mean, not uncommon, but a bit more than usual. So which is great. Gives it all the more bang for the buck. So yeah, the next one is the Glasgow 1770 peated. In terms of your malt supplying and the kind of peat source for this next one, Sebastian, we maybe start there while people are getting this dram poured.
Sure. So our peated malt all comes from Aberdeenshire. So it's peated with mainland peat. And the difference, I'm sure people have heard before on these tastings and elsewhere, the difference between mainland peat and island peat is quite pronounced. So the peat bogs from where we source the peat to peat the barley for this whiskey is all developing underneath heather. So it's heather-rich peat. Heather, this big floral, quite floral kind of style of plant. It's degrading over thousands of years and giving us this big, rich floral smoke coming into the barley. Very different from Isla peat, for example, which is much more medicinal and salty. And for me, what it gives us into the actual whiskey itself is like rich, smoky barbecue, campfire, bonfire elements. This bottling, so it's the green one here, the peated core range, it's also double matured. So virgin American white oak used initially. Again, those virgin oak casks from Kentucky, from Kelvin Cooperage. And this has been then finished for secondary maturation for 8 months to a year in Pedro Jimenez sherry casks. So for me, it's like you can't really go wrong with peat and sherry. And this is a great example of that. They kind of combine really, really nicely. Rich, kind of floral, sweet smoke for me. On the nose, it really is just like rich, smoky barbecue sauce. And yeah, nicely well integrated. I think, good whiskey, if we're talking about balance, you want the spirit profile to not be over ridden by the cask influence and vice versa. You don't want the cask itself to dominate the whiskey within. And this is just, yeah, really nicely balanced, well put together, big, rich, smoky style. And very, very much if you put this blind on someone's kind of tasting, they wouldn't necessarily think this is from one of the newer lowland distilleries, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, and as we mentioned at the start, this one won the non-age statement single malt category for the W Club Awards. So that's a testament to that. Just to clarify, because I've mentioned in the comments there that you said that the barley's from Aberdeenshire, but the peated barley is, but the peat is from that area as well, just to just so I'm not steering
Oh,
Kevin wrong in the chat there.
no. So yeah, the peat itself is from Aberdeen. The barley is British barley, so it's from all over the
But
UK.
it's malted in Aberdeen as well then, and comes down to
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah, exactly
Um,
that.
Brilliant. Bob says, I love the PX sherry with this peated dram, delicious. Just a hint of mossiness on the nose also. While we like a pond algae, says Duncan. That's an interesting tasting note.
Nice.
The excuse me. You mentioned earlier on about sort of it being inspired by some American craft distilleries. Is there some examples of that that you can give? I mean, I know there's the people on this side of the ocean, I suppose. We kind of, apart from when a few break through, like the Leaper's Fork winning W Club Whiskey of the Year last year, or well, the year before. It's there's actually way more than we think. Like they're just everywhere. These kind of small to medium size distilleries in America. Was there any you'd visited or have relationships with that you've kind of been inspired by more specifically?
I wish I could give you a great story about how we visited one particular one and they inspired the guys who started the distillery. But to be honest, no. It was part of the overall movement and that boom in craft distilling in America, and seeing that kind of translating through into what was happening in the UK. So I'm not able to give you an exact kind of distillery or an exact example that inspired the place. And I would also say, the way the Glasgow distillery runs, we kind of just keep our heads down and we're a small team just focusing on making good whiskey. We're not trying to think too much about kind of make any statements about where we want to see the industry go or what we want to be doing. It really just is a small team just focusing on making good quality spirit using good quality casks on the outskirts of Glasgow. So that's probably not a very interesting answer, I'm afraid, Luke.
No, that's fine. It's a good honest answer. Kevin says, I'm into medicinal Isla peat, but I must say this is extremely pleasant, fruity applewood smoke. Nice. Jeff says, I've never tried pond algae. Silas says, rich and sweet has to be my favorite of the three. It is. I think you were saying beforehand about having the peated, there would be an option in a lineup like this to push the peated one after, because there's a couple that we're going to try that aren't peated, but I think it is it doesn't seem out of place despite the kind of extra flavors. It's not, and it's not one of those big. I think the objection people have to having peated earlier in the tasting tends to be those big, but like if you're drinking a really like smoky, oily Lefroy or something, where it does kind of linger around. Whereas this kind of has a finish, but I can't imagine it impacting when we try the next one, the Constantina,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, so I think the peated whiskies we make, they tend to be quite accessible, especially at this lower ABV at 46%. It's a very welcoming, kind of warming smoke. It's like being hugged by a heather smoked beast, a little monster. And I often get people who say, oh, I hate peated whiskies. I don't drink peated whiskies. Then they try it and say, oh, I can enjoy this. I really like this one for a peated whiskey, and it surprises people. And when we were talking about just the lineup for tonight, just before everyone else jumped on, I kind of said to you, well, I'm not really sure about putting the peated one in the middle, but let's go for it, because I think actually trying these first three in a row side by side. What you're trying is the core 3 single malts from the distillery. And it really goes back to what I was saying at the beginning about versatility. And when you try these in isolation, and if you're to try them blind, you wouldn't necessarily think they're from the same distillery, or that they're all between 4 and 5 years old, these whiskies that we're trying here as well. And that's something we try to celebrate and trying to, push the boat out on, is terms of that accessibility and that flavor range. And it's not so much about how we want to make something for everyone, but it just happens that we've got the triple distills, which we call like the smooth and vibrant style. We've got the rich and smoky peated and the original that kind of sits right in the middle. And it makes a really nice core 3 whiskies to be able to demonstrate, contemporary, modern, urban distillation. It's not just about what region you're from to dictate what kind of whiskey you can make. You can really be making a big, wide variety of different styles if you change your recipe up.
Yeah, it's dividing opinion. I mean, I'm a big fan. It probably is my favorite so far, but it's dividing opinion in the chat where Silas says has to be the favorite of the 3, which I think we've already mentioned. But David and Helen said not for me. As I've aged, I've become less keen on peaty whiskies. Duncan says finish is consistently evolving, gets progressively stickier and meltier as time goes on. You talking about memory or this whiskey, Duncan? Peat seems to be more expressive on the finish than on the palate. Very interesting. Maltier, sorry, is what he meant to say than meltier. So my apologies. I just read that correction afterwards. The applewood smoked bacon, says Stuart, which is a brilliant tasting note. Winter's Night fireside dram. Couldn't agree more, Frank. Or maybe a kind of a spring side night fireside dram. Glad to have a bottle on my shelf. Very approachable. My favorite thus far, says John. Just starting the whiskey journey, says Paul. Bit too peaty for me. Love a peaty whiskey. Great flavor and mouthfeel. So there's a couple of people who the peat. That's the nature of any peated whiskey, I suppose. Yeah,
absolutely.
So,
but I think the comment about the mouthfeel is really interesting too, and that harks back to those different cut points. With this peated core style that we produce, we've got that lower cut point, so you've got an oilier, more viscous quality in the spirit that's coming off the still. When you put that into virgin oak casks, which are like super thirsty casks, they draw in the whiskey into the wood and out back into the whiskey again. You're getting a lot of character. And then on top of that, you got Pedro Jimenez sherry, the kind of sweetest, richest, stickiest style of sherry you get in a Spain. It's a lot of different flavors all kind of coming together and just working. And it gives you that kind of viscous, oily, rich, smoky, salty kind of character. And I can understand if someone's not into their peated whiskies, why it wouldn't necessarily be their favorite. But that's the joy of whiskey, right? It's the such a versatile category.
Yeah, no, 100%. Frank has said in terms of the time of year to drink this, spring, summer, autumn, Christmas, and Halloween. So he refuses to recognize winter as a in it's Halloween and Christmas. That's how you define winter, and then we're back into the spring. I like that, Frank.
I like it.
Brilliant. I think brilliant. I think this is an Easter dram for me, but it's a lovely whiskey. And I agree, and it definitely is a great Halloween dram. I was obviously being a bit facetious, but it's a good shout. Nicholas says I don't really go for peated, but have had this bottle in the collection for a while. Beautiful dram. Frank C says Frank is an all-round peat monster. Says Bob. Brilliant. So this one, like the triple distilled, was originally it's sorry, I've lost my run on myself. So it was originally 52. It's 10% off for premium members. So that brings down to 46, and it's 39.78 with the 15% off from tonight. So another great priced dram. John says, I'm super impressed with the diverse range of high quality whiskies you produce. I'm going to keep a watch on your distillery. Duncan says, a very mild peat IMO, searching for those who aren't usually peat fans to have a go at, I reckon. I totally agree, Duncan. I think it's not to sound like I'm trying to be too diplomatic here, Sebastian, and be too polite, but I do think it's that nice balance between, if you're a peaty drinker, there's enough going on there because you can get some really light peated ones that they may as well not be peated. But yeah, it's still, as Duncan's saying, it's still approachable for someone who's not who's a bit intimidated by those big kind of iodine-y peated whiskies. So I think it is a good one. Bob says, yet to find a Glasgow 1770 that hasn't impressed me. Dram Grammar says, love that price point. Didn't really change when you moved from 50 cl to 70 cl, a dram for the people. So maybe actually while we come on to we'll slowly start moving towards the next one, which is the Constantia. But in terms of that, you have had a few kind of iterations of that, like you said, the 50 cl, I believe. The bottle change, obviously not just the bottle size change, so that was that, but you had a bit of a redesign as well. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so we started, like I say, we started our whiskey production in 2015. And because we don't have a visitor centre, we're very much funded by sales. And so we launched our first whiskey 3 years later. And then the year after that, our first peated whiskey. And these first releases were all in 50 cl bottles. And part of the reason for that was in 2015, for example, we filled about 200 casks in the whole year in our first year of production. In our second year, it wasn't that much more. Nowadays, we're filling 1,400 or so casks. And so when we were working with such small quantities of whiskey, we wanted to get the whiskey out there and the name out there. But it allowed us basically to spread the whiskey a little bit further. And being a new producer with all the costs that are associated with it, we wanted to try and keep the price point as low as possible for our first few years of production. So we put out our whiskies in 50 cl bottles to help with keeping the price low per bottle, or as low as we could per bottle. And then when we started producing more or having access to older stocks, we moved into the 70 cl bottles, the more standard kind of format. And we kept the price point the same as what we were charging for the 50, so around about 50 quid a bottle. And the reason for that was just kind of it's kind of like a coming of age moment for the distillery, where we'd be producing for a number of years. We had whiskey that we could bottle, and all the cost savings that we were getting by our economies of scale, we kind of passed through onto the consumer. And that's still the attitude of the distillery as well. So we've held our prices for all of our whiskies over the last 2 years. And last year, I think, or the end of the year before, we actually reduced the price of the original as well. So we're trying to make good quality whiskey and put it out at a decent, fair price. And at the end of the day, all of us in the distillery, we're all kind of whiskey nerds and whiskey geeks. We all buy a lot of whiskey, and we're trying to put out whiskey that we'd want to buy at a price point that we'd want to pay.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, that's definitely the way to look at it. I've spoke to many kind of a sort of person from small, you might have even said this to me before, but people who've, from when I was in Irish whiskey, people who are opening distilleries, they're like, they have this economic pressure that they need to obviously bring in money after investing huge amounts of money in a distillery, but they also don't want to drink something that if they were nothing to do with the distillery, they couldn't afford themselves. So yeah, it's a good kind of philosophy to have. Just to clarify, for when we're on the Constantia now, which is a type of wine that you're going to explain to us all about its history and its grape variety and how the Romans brought it through the Pyrenees and all that.
Sure. It sounds like you could take it, to be honest. Like.
I just made that up. I'm not.
So Constantia is part of our small batch series. So just a real quick recap on how we structure the whiskies. So we've got the core 3 single malts that we've tried, and that is those were available in about 27 countries around the world. And then we have some annual releases that come out once a year, and we're going to try one of those after this one with the bourbon cask. And then we also have a range called the small batch series. So all the bottles have the small batch series neck here. And these are basically a revolving door of cool limited editions that really just showcase the experimental casks that we're trying at any one time in the distillery. And because we're still a young team, a young distillery, we're still getting to know our single malt and find out how our different styles of whiskey interact with different styles of casks. So, for example, we find the peated whiskies work well in X cask, but not in Y, and vice versa, triple distilled in X and not in Y. So the small batch products, some of them are one-offs, some of them are single casks, all of them are low outturn, higher ABVs, and just really showcase all the variety of casks that we're trying. Saying that, this particular one that we're trying, this came out last year, and it was one of 3 wine casks that we released. This Constantia is an unpeated, double distilled single malt. So it has the heart, the base of the original. It's been bottled at 56.6% ABV. It's 5 years old, 980 bottles. So we took together 3 casks that were all initially filled in 2020. And all the information you could possibly want on the bottling, on the profile, on the time it's been spent in wood, etc., is all detailed on the bottle. So first fill bourbon casks, finished for 1 year, 10 months in the Constantia wine. So Constantia, people often say, like, what is that? Constantia is a South African dessert wine. So it's a sweet white wine, comes from a region, the region of Constantia, which is about 15 kilometers south of Cape Town. It's got a long history of winemaking. It's one of the most important winemaking regions in probably the Southern Hemisphere. And production goes back to the 1600s. Constantia as a wine, though, nowadays there's only 2 producers. So you've got Klein Constantia and Groot Constantia. And so it's quite hard to find. But it's got this really great reputation for being like packed with fruit, with honey notes, with this like big sweet richness. And it's also got a long history of being enjoyed by famous people as well. So Napoleon's favorite wine was Constantia, and he requested a glass of it on his deathbed. Also, you can see references to Constantia in Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, who recommends a glass of Constantia as the remedy for a broken heart, I think is the way it's phrased, or something along those lines. So if anyone has a broken heart here, then maybe this is going to help. But the region and the wine itself, so it's predominantly made from white muscat grape. And the region, because it's on the coast, just south of Cape Town, is quite high acidic grapes that are grown there. So like lots of Sauvignon Blancs grown there as well. So you've got this, the clay content in the soil, the elevation at which the grapes are grown. You've got the breeze coming in off the sea, gives you this high acidity into the white muscat. And what that gives into Constantia is this balance of sweet and acid. And what that brings into the whiskey for me is all these notes of like sweet oranges, clementines, pink grapefruit, honey. It's got a very distinctive nose. It's obviously quite sweet because you've got that sweet wine influence, but then you get all of this like rich honey, floral, blossom, and those kind of like acidic fruit notes as well with that grapefruit and that orange.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I always take all my inspiration in terms of fashion and flavor from Napoleon. The it's divided a bit of opinion in the chat, a bit like the peated one. Duncan says strangely savory on the nose in a nice way. Constantina is the I'm pronouncing it wrong. Can you pronounce it again there, Sebastian?
I'd say Constantia.
Constantia is by
Yeah.
far the best in my opinion. Wow, that nose really jumps out, says Kevin. Extra ABV helps picking up cognac-like aroma on the nose and a rich honey sweetness in the palate. Difficult choices tonight. Wow, that really is a nice in the palate. Enigmatic nose. I've never used that description of a whiskey, but I can't put my finger on it. Looking forward to tasting it. I'm getting soapy smell in the nose, not unpleasant. Helen gets rice pudding when tasting. I wonder, is that a bit like the what you call it, the coriander, when some people love it and some people it tastes like soap, because it was
Sure.
mentioned there that it's savory as well. The defo getting the whole notes. Constantia is my favorite so far. Love this one. Now we're talking. This is one for me. Favorite by far. Guess I must have a very sweet tooth. I get something savory on the nose, like foam from an ale cask rather than wine. That's a brilliant. I was in a very big real ale bar in terms of it's famous and has like loads of real, like I think 12 different real ales on tap on Tuesday night, and I get what Frank is saying. I can see that. Same here for the favorites. So I was maybe wrong. I read ahead a bit, and I thought I saw some of the ones about not putting their fingers on it and read them a bit negatively. But going through it there, I think it's everyone actually does like it. So maybe not as divisive as the peated one.
Divisive isn't a bad thing at all. And these small batch releases, they're made to be super interesting and a bit funky and some kind of esoteric cask use that's sometimes a bit weird. And that's, for me, this like one of my favorite parts of my job and what we do at the distillery is putting out these small batch releases, because we use a lot of really cool, interesting casks, a lot of times casks that people haven't heard of before. And we get to do all this research and find out how we're getting these flavors into the whiskey and then share those stories. And sometimes these casks that we use are quite divisive in themselves. So we use like Tokai wine from Hungary, and that's got this real big, funky, almost rum quality to it. And those are quite divisive. Some people say it's like the best thing they've ever tried. Some people say they absolutely hate it. And then we basically fill everything we can while still legally calling it Scotch whiskey, like Madeira, Marsala, tequila, mezcal, whole loads of ports, wines, you name it. And when we find stuff that we think we're really interested in the distillery and in the blending team, we're like, okay, well, we've got 3 of these casks. It's going to be 900 bottles. I bet we can find 900 people who are going to enjoy this out there, you know? And it really is just almost like a look into the tasting room and seeing how we're tasting our whiskies and what we're finding works with the different spirit profiles that we're making. Very much more on the experimental arm of what we do.
Yeah, we had one of the Tokai releases on the last tasting we did together. Or the last full one, not on the one before Christmas. And yeah, so this is a good evolution in that regard for people who were on that one. Duncan says this one could definitely grow on me. I do like a balance between sweet and umami notes. So I've picked up from trying Japanese green tea. I hope that's what he's trying to say. Delicious with some water to open it out. Would love to have had longer in the finishing cask. I've never tried a Glasgow Distillery Drams before. Super impressed and look forward to enhancing my collection at home with your offerings. Speaking of, John, if you want to enhance your collection, right? This one, it's 59 quid. With the 15% discount you'll get tonight, £50, 15 pence. And on top of that, you earn about 200 W Club points. So you're nearly there to an extra £5 off your next order. So there's no reason not to buy this tonight, John, to enhance your collection or multiple of these bottles. Ian says, this is great. It's also very spicy for me, like jalapeno spice. Interesting. Personally, I don't get a lot of spice compared to some of the other ones we've had tonight. So that's really interesting. Maybe that's just me. Yeah, I think there's some great comments there. Now I've tasted it really balanced, sweet and sour with lingering pepper. Brilliant. So
it's 56.6%. So you're going to have a little bit more of that alcohol heat towards the end. Absolutely. This is 3 casks that we married together, 980 bottles. It's sold out from the distillery now, sold out a couple of weeks ago. So if you do like it, then, you know, grab it while you can, because we don't have many casks of these left in the distillery. So I'm not sure if we're going to be releasing any more like this for at least another couple of years.
Excellent. There you go, folks. You know, that's what they say. The great economists of the Scottish Enlightenment said it's all about supply and demand, you know. So yeah, marvelous. So while we're kind of sipping away on this one, so as I said, £50, 15. We'll slowly come on to the next one, which I believe is the bourbon cask matured. So we're veering back into the peated whiskey zone on this one. We have it down on our website as the 2025 release. So I presume this is similarly done in kind of varying batches.
Yeah, so this is whereas the Constantia is part of the small batch series, which is a revolving door of limited editions, change every year. Some of them they come and they go. The bourbon cask matured 8-year-old, which is this bottle here. This is a new annual release. So batch number 1 came out last year. And so this will be coming out once a year for the foreseeable future. And this is, as the label suggests, 8 years of age, when our oldest whiskey in cask is 10. It's not a big age statement for most, but for us it's up there. And this is an equal marriage of our peated and unpeated single malt coming together. So 54% ABV, 6 casks, all fully matured in bourbon, first fill bourbons, a mixture of Heaven Hill and Jim Beam bourbon barrels. 3 of those casks were peated single malt double distilled, and 3 of them were unpeated double distilled. And for me, one of the reasons why we wanted to bring this out was when I'm reflecting on our whiskies that we make at the distillery, they are quite cask dominant whiskies. So it's quite common with the younger distilleries to have cask forward expressions. And we use like virgin oak and we use like highly active casks. So what I wanted to do was put out there something that really celebrated the quality of the spirit that we're making, something that's a bit more stripped back. It doesn't rely on like a real big, heavy sweet wine influence or virgin oak or something else. It's much more of a showcase of what the spirit quality and what the true DNA and identity of Glasgow Distillery is. And that's exactly what it does for me, at least. 54%, so the ABV is a couple percent points lower than the last one we tried, but it gives you everything you'd expect from a bourbon cask, with that honey, that citrus fruit, that butterscotch, that caramel, that toffee. And what I love is the integration of the peated malt into this. It gives you this lick of smoke around the palate and into the finish that just wraps everything up really, really nicely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've just taken a sip. It's incredible. It's like a oof, the finish is, it really goes on, and it's a bit like a marriage between the triple distilled and the peated in the original range.
Mhm.
It's got some of that lightness of the triple distilled and some of that kind of texture, but it's got this kind of like lovely peppery kick and finish there as well. I do like yeah, big fan of that one. Especially that might be my favorite so far actually. Personally.
It's a
So
bit
this
more of a purist's whiskey, this one, I would say, where it's just like straight down the middle, bourbon cask matured, no frills, nothing too fancy.
yeah.
And that's what I really like about it. And it sold really, really well this year. So batch two will be coming out in summer 2026. And we also launched last year a 6-year-old Ruby Port cask matured unpeated single malt. That sold out really quickly, so we're doing that again this year. So these are 2 annual releases that sit above the core 3 single malts we make. They have age statements, quite prominent. They're a bit higher ABV. And we might be adding to those annual releases with a third one, something that we've been working on this week in the warehouse.
Oh, exciting. Any hints?
Well, I'd like to do something either lightly peated or fully peated, and it would be something a bit more robust and something with some grape influence, no doubt, coming along.
Marvelous. So this one's 48.45 with the discount, so it's £57 normally. For us on our website anyway. So yeah, it's a lovely dram. I like that. Yeah, what you're saying, it's kind of like stripped back. It's like the I don't know, the Thomas Tuchel to the Costanza's Pep Guardiola or something. I was trying to think of a
Absolutely.
better Marcelo Bielsa maybe is a better example, but yeah, one for the purists. No, it's a lovely dram. We'll get your thoughts in here, folks. You're a small bit quieter on this one, but still keeping the comments coming. Butterscotch and smoke popcorn almost. The popcorn is a great taste note, Stuart. I totally agree. Clean, pure bourbon
Nice.
dram. Peat contributing to a lemmy zesty aroma on the nose. That is so smooth and actually very mellow. I love the subtlety of the smoke. Totally agree, Kevin. Personally, I prefer the previous peated expression. Um, yeah, fair enough. And I think this is my favorite so far, says Silas. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. My apologies. Frank Deese is very good. Kilcairn notes. Kilcairn is actually a great shout. I can see that. Do you find this is a distillery that people compare either any different 3 of the core range, because you go in different directions with the variety there, any of your whiskies to a lot? Is there ones that people that come up and people do you do these tastings or people do your tours?
People, not so much the whiskey profile, but people do compare us a little bit to other distilleries that have multiple production styles coming out of the one distillery. So, if someone says Kilkerran, then my job's done. That's brilliant feedback. Um, but you've got the likes of kind of Loch Lomond, where they have
Hmm.
their multitude of different styles of new make production. Um, I wouldn't say there's one distillery that people do compare us to. I probably always listen a bit more when people call us similar to Springbank or Kilcairn or something like that. But I would definitely not be saying that, not at this stage.
Yeah, no, that's you. You let other people say that for you. Like that's the beauty of it. The
Yeah.
yeah, Kevin says honey. We've got more of a sherry lover here, but it's still a great dram. Can you remind me how to say that again? Costanza,
Constantia.
Constantia,
Constantia.
is
Yeah.
calling me though so far. I said Constantino originally, and I cannot get that out of my head now. Citrusy and tangy on the palate. I think this the what's that Taiwanese whiskey called again? The very famous one, begins with a K. Cavalan. Do they have a Constantino
Hmm.
one or a Concerto one or something like that? Citrusy and tangy on the palate.
Sure.
Cavallani, and thank you. Yeah. Brilliant. No, this is I still stand by that. This is my favorite of the ones so far. You mentioned
Yeah,
your
it's
kind of
bright,
pros.
vanilla forward, lots of honey, a little bit of that citrus note. It's yeah, very drinkable. As well at 54%, it's still very smooth, very, very drinkable at that strength.
Considering all the drams we've tried tonight, with the discount, are under 50 quid, I think is amazing given the quality of what we've sampled. You mentioned that kind of process, or that you were in the warehouse developing a kind of possible third annual release. In terms of you being a small team and people wearing different hats, how does that work in terms of how do you decide what goes into NPD?
Sure. So we take people from different areas of the business. So myself, Alex, who's our head distiller, and Mike, who's one of the original founders. The three of us kind of do all of the blending, sampling, analysis, and kind of planning where we want the whiskies to go. Mike, one of the owners, he also looks after all kind of future proofing of what casks we're buying, what direction we want to go in the long term, with me and Alex kind of supporting him in that way. But once we come to an idea of what we want to do and we find some casks that we really like, we also involve the whole of the distillery itself. So once we have a bottling and we have a strength that we want to bottle it at, everyone has a chance to write tasting notes to try it, to feed back into the three of us. And it's the team's tasting notes, the whole distillery team, that go on the bottles and on the labels. And the distilling team themselves also shut down the full-scale production for 2 weeks every year. And we have our own on-site, very small little lab where we do specialty yeast trials. And so for 2 weeks every year, we just run specialty yeast new make trials on the full scale, on the stills themselves. And that process starts in the lab on a very small little still, where we're taking different cut points of some interesting yeast styles, across peated and unpeated as well. And then when we find something we think works, run that through next door and fill maybe 6 to 12 casks of each. So that's stuff like different ale yeasts, rum yeast, champagne, Chardonnay, different types of wine yeasts as well. So in the future, when we have small batch releases, we will be hopefully talking about not just the casks that we've been using, but also about the different yeast strains and why they've influenced the whiskey with different flavors. But for the actual core of what we do, the single malts and as they are now, we spend about maybe 4 to 6 days every month, the three of us in the blending team, going through cask samples, either in the warehouse or in the tasting room we've got. And we have an idea of what we want to be doing. And on paper, we've got a database that shows us of everything we've got. On paper, we have great plans and ideas, but it's not really until you try those casks that you actually see what's feasible. And importantly, also what's repeatable year on year as well, for things that you want to be a little bit more longer term into the brand hierarchy. So yeah, I don't know if that really answered you at all, but
Yeah, no, I
that's how
mean
it
in
is.
terms of balance process, it definitely does. And is there like, obviously when you're developing these things, that sounds really good and collaborative, but who is the one who is the final rubber stamp? We're going to put money behind this onto the bottling line.
Yeah, well, the three of us, we're quite a good team, the three of us on the blending side. So we will usually come to an agreement. And because there's three, it means that it's not heavily skewed towards one person's preference. So I have a real aversion to like red wine casks, for example, and the other two don't. So we will occasionally bring in some red wine into some of the marriages. So there's a lot of, but by having three people and not just like one master blender, it means you have a bit more of a democratic output, and hopefully a bit more representative of what the consumer and what the public will enjoy as well. Saying that, Mike's the owner, and if he really wants to do something, he just says, well, I don't care. I'm doing it anyway.
No, well, fair enough. That's a good answer. No, that's no, genuinely interesting to hear in terms of process. Ina says, "Can you wish my Libby congratulations on her engagement?" So I'll let you go first,
Oh,
Sebastian.
nice. Yeah, I will pass it on to Libby. So Libby's my colleague in the marketing
Oh,
side.
I didn't
And
realize he said my Libby. I didn't know the context. I presumed it was someone I didn't know. Well, obviously I don't
No,
know,
no.
but yeah.
So Livy's one of my colleagues, and she, I don't know if she hosted Ian on a tour potentially, or if it was on a tasting or something, but she spends a lot of her time hosting tastings out and about at all the festivals across the UK and abroad. and she just got engaged to Alex, who works at Locklee. So there's a little industry collaboration going on there.
Well, that's fantastic. That's brilliant. Yeah, delighted for them. He says, I've known Libby for years from festivals, etc. That's great. I didn't realize the context, Ian. I thought maybe Libby was, I don't know, your sister or daughter or something, and you were just asking for us all to wish them well. So that's helpful. Brilliant. No, that's fantastic. So we'll come on to our final dram of the night, which is
Nice.
the TWS Exclusive.
Yep.
As we pour this, I must warn you folks. So this was originally done for just the 2 Glasgow stores. It's been put on web especially for this tasting, but there's only 14 bottles left. So yeah, if you're interested in this one, you enjoy this one, move fast. No, maybe you won't be, but just putting it out there in case you're emailing me tomorrow being like, how come I couldn't get one? So yeah, but this is one you've done exclusively for us. Can you explain a bit about us? I haven't actually tried this yet, so I'm looking forward to trying this myself.
Yeah, this for me. So we launched this in the Glasgow stores in I think it was end of October. We had the window display in the shop in Buchanan Galleries over November, December. So we wanted to do a single cask bottling just to celebrate that and to support the shop. So this for me is like, it sums up Glasgow Peated single malt in a bottle. It's big, it's rich, it's smoky. You get all of that barbecue, that bacon, that big honeyed sweet smoke note, and then all of this like rich fruit on top. So the Whisky Shop Exclusive, this is a 9-year-old single malt. So this is some of the older stock that we have. It's a 2016 cask, so a single cask number 16, so year 2016, cask number 842. And it's almost like the original, but in reverse. So it's been matured in a first full bourbon cask for 3 years. And then it's been in a virgin American white oak cask, one of those casks from Kelvin Cooperage in Kentucky, for 6 years and 2 months. So we've called it virgin American white oak. It's double matured with that bourbon going into that virgin, but 6 years in virgin with a 3-year initial period in bourbon. So you're getting a little bit of that, like, again, that bourbon
I've lost you now. It's virgin, it's bourbon, it's like, but no, it's
Sorry,
lovely though. Sorry.
I'm getting carried away. Yeah, bourbon influence, honey, butterscotch, all of that stuff. Virgin oak, loads of dark fruit, rich, robust profile, and big, just like big, juicy, meaty, peated dram. This one, 9 years, 54%, only 180 bottles. It's a real cool one.
No, it definitely is. The nose is incredible. So just in that, I didn't mean to actually cut you off because I genuinely lost the thing. So it goes from bourbon to virgin, back to bourbon, back to virgin. Sorry.
No, sorry. So to make it 3 years in bourbon, 6 years, 2 months in virgin. That's it.
Okay. Sorry. I misunderstood you. I thought it had been transferred back again. No, it's an interesting one. As you mentioned, only less than 200 bottles. So it was a real limited one. It doesn't smell 54% ABV.
Yeah, it's nice and soft, isn't it? Nice and juicy. What I really like is trying some of our stock that's had this extended virgin oak influence, because virgin oak is like, we think of virgin oak as almost like a dry sponge. So if you throw a dry sponge in a bath, it's going to soak up the water really quickly. And that's kind of what happens inside the cask with the whiskey. Whereas if you use a cask that's a first fill or refill, a bourbon or something, it's like putting a wet sponge in the bath. It's not going to soak up as much. And what that means is the whiskey inside the cask can actually take on a lot of character, a lot of color, almost too quickly sometimes. And I do find that whiskies that are matured for between 1 and 3 years or so in virgin oak can be quite bitter, quite tannic, a little bit too much, almost like you've had a tea bag in your cup of tea for too long. But I find that this really cool thing happens after 5, 6 years or so, is the virgin oak influence just totally mellows out. And you lose a lot of those tannic notes and you get just like big, rich, juicy, fruity character. And so this was something I was thinking about, especially when we were doing this bottling. And I spoke to a couple of other distilleries that use virgin oak, and they said exactly the same thing. Between kind of 5 and 8 years that virgin oak influence, it just totally mellows out, and you're left with something like really dark fruit led and not too tannic and bitter, which I thought was really, really interesting.
No, that really is. Lewis says, without asking too much, I was actually going to make a joke there about sponges, but I've decided, given some of the comments going right now, I've decided I'll leave it off. Without making too much, these are good. Sorry, without asking too much, these are young whiskies. What are your longer term plans? Laying down stuff for 15, 18, 21 years, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, good question, and one we're conscious of. There's been other examples of distilleries that have kind of released everything they can quite quickly, and then they struggle when they're getting to those older age statements. So when we fill, like I say, about 1,400 casks a year, and if we were to bottle all of that year on year, that'd be about 500,000 bottles a year. We put on the market 60,000 bottles a year, give or take. So the majority of our stock isn't getting bottled year on year. The majority of our stock is laying down to be older expressions in the future. So we don't, as a business, we don't need to sell everything that we make. We are quite happy putting out enough product into enough markets to slowly develop a reputation and build kind of a reputation for being a good producer, with a view that in the longer term, we're going to have stocks and we're going to be able to, enjoy them when they come. In terms of, and I think that was what the question was asking. The question might also be referring to what kind of profiles and how we talk about cask management for the longer years. Because
I think it was definitely a combination of that, and maybe a combination of, do you plan on, I don't want to put words in their mouths, but plan on doing like a 15-year-old down the line, or a 21-year-old? Or are you going to stay with this kind of profile age-wise?
Well, the core range will probably stay as it is for the next few years. We had a 10-year-old whiskey last year, so we launched 2 single casks. This year will be our 11th year of making whiskey, but it'll be our 10th year of making peated whiskey. So we're going to be launching our first 10-year-old peated single malt later this year. And then we have enough casks that we've ring fenced to be, 12, 15, 18, 20, 30, 40. Long after I'm gone, we're earmarked casks to be those ages. So basically, we only bottle a small amount of what we could bottle year on year to allow ourselves to have older stocks to play with in the future.
No, that makes perfect sense. We've got some great taste notes come in there as well. Bob says, well, this isn't, it's in the exclusive section. This refers to people who can't find it on the website. It's actually on the original page for the Digital Drams. Even though it's sold out, it hyperlinks to all the whiskies in there as well. Slightly floral on the nose. Anyone? Duncan says, yeah, definitely. Bacon jam was a tasting note that was mentioned there by. Ooh, I've lost it. But that's an incredible tasting note. Trying to find it here. When people replied, they jump out of order. Yeah, Frank D said it. And yeah, we've got burnt orange, which is one that's come up before. And chocolate also came up before. Drop of Water really released floral/perfume notes and reduced the smoke also. Yeah, Lewis is thank you for your answer on terms of the cask. He says, hopefully in 10 years, I'll be tasting have another tasting with your first 21-year-old. Slightly floral on the nose, we mentioned already. Subtle, peaty flavor, very enjoyable. So yeah, I think this is actually, I didn't want to like this one as much as I do. I wanted to like them all, Sebastian, but I didn't want this to be my favorite because it will sound like I'm being biased. But it definitely, yeah, I've really enjoyed this and the 8-year-old bourbon, let's say. They're both exceptional drams.
Well, thank you. I think it's a really nice lineup that we've gone through, because when you compare this one we're trying now to where we began with that triple distilled, they're like chalk and cheese, which is exactly what we're trying to do.
There's a couple of people I just to clarify again on that comment that it's in the whiskey was only put live today, so the search only index twice a day. So if a whiskey goes live in the morning, it goes on the search, but it goes live in the middle of the day, it doesn't go again till like 10 or 11 at night. So that's why it's not coming up in your search. But if you go into the page, I'm going to link it into the chat now. Yeah, if you go into the page that was the original dram pack and under tastings in your member section, you'll find it there. Bob says best tasting of 2026. It's our only one so far, Sebastian, but
Yeah.
maybe Bob's been on 20 other ones, so we don't know that, let's not assume.
At least
Um,
he didn't say worst tasting at 26.
exactly. No, that's true.
Although I
That's true.
guess it must be if it's the only one.
Yeah, it's both. It's
Yeah.
currently Schrodinger's tasting. It's both the worst and the best. Um, so at this point now is when we normally. I'm going to put the actually I'll just say it now. WS26 GD is the code that will get you 15% off all of these drams tried tonight. I'm also going to type that into your chat. This is where people normally pop in with their favorites tonight. So be interesting to hear that. Do you have a personal favorite, Sebastian, out of these?
Well, like I said at the start, the triple distilled is one of my favorite whiskies that we always do because I feel like it's a bit of an underdog. The 8-year-old bourbon is for me just like a real clean expression of who we are. And this 9-year-old is a perfect dram for the right occasion as well. I probably wouldn't go back to it every day because it's quite a big, bold flavor, but um, yeah, really nicely put together. Good fun.
Hmm.
I like them all, but I'm a little bit biased.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Ian says never a bad tasting. Some are just better than others. I like that sentiment. Yeah. So there's just trying to see. It seems to be a bit of a split between the bourbon and the uh Constantia.
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 Fucking hell. At some point, and just to clarify, that's not the drink, folks, because I was getting this wrong, stone cold sober at the start. Yeah, the Constantia seems to be edging it. But a lot of really positive comments about both yourself and the distillery, Sebastian. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll have a few more of these coming up, folks. And we'll try and get them more frequent than they've been recently. So yeah, is there anything, if there's anyone wants to ask Sebastian anything quickly before we go, just get that question quickly in the chat. Is there anything you wanted to share with us before you finish, Sebastian?
Not really. I guess hopefully people have come away from the tasting appreciating we're a small independent producer, but producing some really interesting stuff, wide variety of flavor. And yeah, keep an eye out on some really cool releases coming out this year. Like I say, first 10-year-old peated single malt will be out in autumn. Got some new small batch experimental cool casks, which hopefully people haven't heard of before. That'll be coming out in April. And if you want to see the distillery and do a tour, join me in the warehouse. You can book all that stuff on our website.
Marvelous. Well, thank you for everyone listening, who or watching, who's joining for the first time. I hope you've enjoyed it. And well, to everyone who joined, but yeah, I hope that the first time listeners have enjoyed it. Some great comments coming in there. So thank you, folks, and we'll catch you all again shortly. Thank you for your time, Sebastian.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Have a good night. WS26 GD. That's your discount code. See you, folks. Bye.